Help support this channel and get early access to videos, plus exclusive content and patrons-only live discussions by becoming a member at patreon.com/Bruce Poinsette. This is the Bruce Poinsette Show, the world's most dangerous infomercial, and I have a special guest with me, Shaina Pomerantz, the executive director of Race Talk. Shaina, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Hi, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in today, and we're doing something a little bit different, where I got a few questions for Shaina, but actually she's going to be interviewing me because, as you'll soon see, we have a little thing coming up at Race Talks, and yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. But first, just for the people who, like, Race Talks is an institution in Portland. It's been for years, but
Thank you for
for
that.
those who for those who don't know, or for those who aren't familiar, who haven't been, can you just talk a little bit about the event?
Yeah, absolutely. So for folks who don't know anything about Race Talks, it's Race Talks Uniting to Break the Chains of Racism. That's the full name. It was established in 2011 by my mom, Donna Maxey. She's been hosting conversations there the second Tuesday of every month at Kennedy McMenamin School in Northeast Portland. Generally, we have conversations that are dealing with historical as well as contemporary issues, but it's always discussed through the lens of race and racism. So people who have been coming to Race Talks since 2011 generally walked into the Kennedy School gym. There was a panel discussion. There might be a movie presentation. And that's the first hour. The second hour are breakout facilitated conversations. Starting around 2016, 17, when I moved back to Portland and I got involved in Race Talks with my mom as a volunteer, we decided we wanted to create our own facilitation training program. And so we actually train facilitators on how to facilitate race-centered conversations. And so it's actually been working as a training ground for our facilitators to get monthly practice. So that's been one of the really great things that's been happening. And then over the past few years through the pandemic, we've expanded into more focus of like movies and conversations. We did karaoke and conversations. And so now we're starting to focus on art and culture through our Living Icons program and our History of Black Drag performance that's happening in June. But you're going to be joining us in July, which is actually part of a new program that we're doing where we're highlighting featured community hosts. So rather than us being the ones to actually put on the program, we are actually inviting folks to come in and say, hey, use our space and you present whatever you'd like to talk about, as long as it's through the lens of race and racism. So, and you've agreed to do that.
Yeah, and I'm once again honored that you reach out to me for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to it. Before we talk about that screening, though,
Yeah.
I just want to. I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. Again, Miss Don Maxey, it's an institution in Portland, and I'm just curious. Like, did you ever have any like trepidations about kind of like stepping into that ED role with something like that, especially considering the family?
Absolutely. I mean, I think even before there was Donna Maxey, there was Charles and Johnny Maxey, and so yes, I would say when I came back to Portland in 2016, I go by Pomerantz. Maxey is also my government. I don't go by Maxey. I go by my dad's last name, Pomerantz. And so when I got here, my mom said, you should go by Maxey. And I thought, well, I don't know the lay of the land just yet, and when you're working professionally and people know you personally, that can be hit or miss. And so, I don't look anything like my mom. And so coming into town, and I was working in the legislature at the time, and so really just trying to establish relationships and connections. It worked to my advantage to be a Pomerantz and not a Maxey. And because, everybody growing, and we're going to get into this, but, Portland's a small town. Amongst Black folks, it's even smaller. And, there's history there. And so sometimes I step into relationships where people know my family and they have great feelings and positive things to say. And other times it's like, oh, okay, you're you're connected with those people. I'm like, yeah, but you liked me when before you knew I was connected to those people. So let's keep that going. So, you know, it's an interesting balance. I do find myself saying more so now that, you know, I'm Shaina Maxey, because it's easier than saying I'm Donna's daughter. So.
Yeah. No,
But being an ED in general, I think is tough. And I think especially in the anti-racism work, you know, as I like to say, it's really strange to me that anti-racism doesn't pay, you know, and it's harder than just working in a nonprofit community environment. We're post 2020 riots, we're post George Floyd. People are saying, you know, we're tired of talking about racism. And my response is, well, I'm tired of living it. So, you know, if we could get on the same page there, maybe you can put me out of a job. But I don't, unfortunately, see that happening in my lifetime. So, yeah, being an ED, getting money to sustain ourselves and do this work in community, it's a lot. But I love the opportunity to step into my mom's shoes and work with her and, you know, learn from her every day.
Yeah, I love that, first off. And, you know, it's just when you're talking about not just providing a space for, like, important conversations, but also I think something that comes with these spaces is just the aspect of community building that, again, is so necessary,
Yeah.
especially in a place like this. And you're also talking about training people, giving, like, because facilitation is not just something you can use in that space. Like, that's an actual...
It's a skill.
Yeah, it's a job skill. It's a professional skill. It's also a social a social skill as well.
Yeah.
So, like, Race Talks does a lot, and it's always interesting seeing that gap between all the people who very much recognize and acknowledge that, but then when it comes time to make the money work,
Yeah.
you know, it's always a struggle. It's always, I mean, we're going to talk about Race Talks, but it reminded me, because I saw the story a couple of days ago, like Gavin Newsom basically shutting down, I want to say San Francisco have voted on, like, to move forward with, like, a reparations package. And then Gavin Newsom comes out with a statement of, like, well, reparations can come out in all forms, but, you know, we can't do this. And it's just like the same thing you see every time, where it's like, particularly, I'm just going to highlight white liberals, even a lot of progressives, where they're supportive to a line. And it's usually the money.
Yep.
But it's it's frustrating.
It's extremely frustrating. And I would say in our work, because there's so many amazing folks and organizations doing anti-racism and race-centered and Black-centered conversations, and, you know, Race Talks within the, I like to say we're the gateway drug to anti-racism, you know, so we are an opportunity for people who have never engaged in conversations about race, which ironically a lot of people still have not, you know. And so we have ground rules. We have incorporated something called progressive stacking order. So we don't just allow people to come into the space and start talking. We have a structure that we want people to utilize. And so, you know, people talk about safe and brave spaces. It's a safe space for Black and brown folks. And again, because it's a training space for our facilitators, we don't always get it right. And so one of the things that we are working on now that we're coming back into the in-person space is really emphasizing that if you find yourself in a space and, you know, your facilitator isn't catching your eye or catching the vibe, get up, you know, leave the space, speak up, you know, because I think we as Black folks also need to practice being more vocal when we feel uncomfortable. Far too often I hear Black folks telling me, you know, and I can't believe they said XYZ, you know. And my response is, well, did you say something? Well, no. Well, why not? I don't know. And again, we need practice, you know, countering the BS that we hear. You know, so it's it's an interesting dynamic, but I think everybody needs to learn. I think far too often Black and brown folks will discount the need to learn how to talk about, race-centered conversations because we're living it every day. But it's a very different thing to step in as a facilitator. I have to make sure I'm not triggered, or I'm feeling highly emotional as a facilitator, stepping into conversations. For your event, what we do is we prepare our facilitators by, if it's about a book, if it's about a film, if it's on a particular topic, we make sure that they're researching whatever it is that we're going to present and need to facilitate on, because what we don't want to have happen is we're hearing that information for the first time. And so as the facilitator who's really setting the tone and creating, kind of the vibe for the people at the table, if we're shocked or upset or getting emotional at somebody at the table, then all hell's gonna break loose. Right. So it's really important to kind of check in on, okay, I can anticipate this is gonna go left here. Let me plan for how I'm gonna respond to that and how I'm gonna step into that conversation, and remember to breathe. And I can't say enough that I've been facilitating since fourth grade, and so our facilitation program is really designed for young people to come in and learn how to facilitate, adults in the space. And it's a very empowering thing, but it's a nonstop education. I'm 47. I'm still learning how to be better every day at doing this. So but as far as the funding part, yeah. The qualifying, the quantifying of why our work matters. There are so many folks who are so much better at articulating why it's significant, and so I just fall in line right behind them and say yes, what they said. I co-sign that 100% because it doesn't matter how it's being said. It's write a check, add some zeros. Or you're racist. It's one or the other.
Oh man. I was just because I feel like I'm partially stalling because again we're kind of switching the format up and
that's okay. I'm ready to jump questions. In. I got questions.
I know. I'm stalling a little bit because even though I interview people, fun fact for everyone, still weird for me whenever people ask me questions on the other side. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I can't explain it. But I will say just to that preparation point, because I think that's so key, especially when you're talking about not being like, sometimes those surprises, no matter what you do, they come out. It happens. But there's a lot of this stuff, a lot of wild things that get said in these spaces that you can prepare for.
Yeah.
Or that, just being a Black person in any kind of like anti-racism, DEI type space in Oregon, you've had probably just like some kind of like crash course in just like, oh, that's where that can go. That's where that can go. And
yeah.
being able to, again, like you said, just having facilitators prepared for that because the people at the table are going to be following them.
Right.
People but having it down to one, having the infrastructure and kind of like the planning to be prepared for that is so key. And I feel like another thing about this work is just, it feels like in addition to just like having to like advocate just to like get the funding to support it, oftentimes you're trying to like really get people to like actually respect what goes into it because they come in and it's just like, oh, we're going to show up and we're going to say whatever's on our mind about race and then we're going to leave. And it's not treated with, even if it's not like an intentional, like, it's not like an intentional, like mean or thing, but people just don't think about it with the seriousness it deserves, even though we recognize this is a problem, like an existential problem.
Absolutely.
So again, just sometimes I just love when people talk about, I love talking about the how and listening, more specifically, listen to people talk about the how.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
I'll tell you, you know, one of the new things that we started this year was our Living Icon series. You know, I was getting burnt out, you know, talking about policing and CRT and, you know, all the things that are wrong, you know, for us and the oppression that we experience as Black people. And I wanted to really focus on, you know.
We're doing construction.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to get picked up in the microphone. Ted's going to swap me real quick. I got to run to the restroom. You can
Okay.
just continue on the point.
Okay, cool.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
That.
I'm a classroom teacher, so, you know, I'm going to talk through whatever. You going to hear me. Okay.
Okay.
And I can cut that out later.
Awesome.
I'll be right back. Just
Thank you.
continue where you asked for it.
So, you know, I wanted to start celebrating our joys, you know, our culture, the things that are really significant. And I realized that, you know, in the history of Race Talks, we've really never talked about the significance of music and art and culture as it pertains to anti-racism and advancing us as Black people. And it's literally how the movement has been advanced, right? So, you know, we saw an opportunity to work with Black Butterfly and as a consultant, and this really kind of was extended through the history of Black drag. You know, we were seeing RuPaul, and Poison Waters had the history of drag in Portland class that she was teaching. And it's like, oh, this is a Race Talks opportunity. Like, we could have a panel and have, you know, Black drag queens come and do a performance, you know, but like, how often do you actually just get to sit and talk with drag queens, you know, in our city about like what has life been like? And so we started this last year, and so that kind of started the evening of performance and conversation. And again, it's always over a meal, so you know, we had tickets for food and stuff for folks who attended, specifically Black and brown folks who attended. And then with the Living Icons series, the idea was, how do we give folks their flowers while they're alive to smell them? Because 3 years in the pandemic, we were losing people every day in 2020 here in Portland. And 2021, we thought it was going to get better. And then, of course, you know, more folks were going in 2022, and so the idea of having a way to honor folks who have been icons in our community. And so, you know, we had the mayor, Mr. Knowles, and Norman Boogie Cat Sylvester at our first one in March. And then in May, we had LaRonda Steele and Shirley Nanette. And, you know, I asked Mr. Knowles in May, I said, you know, we're doing this as a fundraiser, and it's a dinner, and it's a catered event, and it's dressed up, and it's like performance, and it's like really intimate. Why are we having trouble selling tickets? And because he had also just had the Albina Vision Trust had just celebrated the Cotton Club night, right? And he said they had like a waiting list of 100 people. I was like, that's phenomenal, you know. Why didn't they come here tonight? That was Saturday. We doing this Tuesday. Why didn't they come over? And he said, you know, I've been trying to tell people to come, but they said, you know, I've been going to Race Talks for free for years. Why would I pay money to go now? And I think that's the challenge, that, you know, when you're passionate about the work you do, you don't always assess your value to it up front. And if there's one thing that my mom has continuously said to me, she said, you know, I did you a disservice by not asking for money. I knew there was a value to it, but I was more invested in getting people to come to the table and have these conversations. And she'll say, you know, what she saw on January 6th, which is her birthday, she foresaw this happening. You know, and so it was imperative that we brought white folks to the table, that we got Black and brown folks talking, because we're going to be a minority majority country, and all hell's breaking loose. We're already seeing this. And so we do things for free because we're passionate. We have skin in this game. We are invested in the bottom line because it's about our ability to exist and thrive as well. Not just, oh, I've got this great idea and I think it's cool, but also I have to live, and why shouldn't I live well? this is really hard work that we do. Why can't I take a trip? Why can't I get a spa day on top of it? Why can't I, whatever? And so I think when we start telling people what our value is and our worth, and it's like, but you always did it for free. Well, just because I did it for free doesn't mean I should have had to do it for free. And so I think I'm seeing that conversation come up not just with white folks. Surprisingly, I'm also having it within folks in our own community. And so I think when you see folks out here doing good work, you see them working hard, write a check if you're in the position to do it. Don't create more barriers on, oh, well, I have to go through this process, or, oh, well, it requires this, or, oh, we know you're doing great work. That's why we approached you in the first place about wanting to support your work. But now we need a whole bunch of things from you that create additional barriers. And it's like, so you want me to stop the work I'm doing that I'm already underfunded and have not enough people to help me do it, to then fill out a bunch of paperwork and plead for money from you, when you could just write a check and you could fill out the forms yourself. So I think that's also a real challenge to the work that I do. And so I've had to figure out, from the nonprofit side, is it more about going and asking people for money, or do we just put a price point on and say the price is what it is? And if you're down with us, you support this work. And if you're not, then I'm not going to beg you to show up. I hope you'll show up. I want you to show up. You're always invited to show up. But I'm more invested in getting the work done than trying to figure out how to get you to write a check. There's other people who are really good at that. And so I would say those people who are in philanthropy, those people who are in marketing and PR and all the things, if they see folks like you, myself, we have so many organizations out here doing great work. If you see these folks out here and they could use more help, then see how you can step up and say, hey, what can I do to get you a check to, really enhance and bolster what you're doing? So that's my little soapbox 2 cents on the money.
No, that's something I struggle with very, very similarly in terms of like, how do you, obviously we need the funding to make these things happen.
Yeah.
And I love that point you made about like what you're doing it's not like it's just, some fun hobby, innocuous thing. Is hard work that serves a very real and present purpose.
Yeah.
And I tend to get frustrated, to be honest with you, when we devalue this, and like not in a way where it's like, oh, we say it's not important, but we devalue that work aspect of it, because especially when we're talking about anti-racism, so many of the forces we're going against, these are people's jobs. Like they're literally getting paid a full salary with benefits to do this work, to like suppress what you're doing.
Right.
To, it's not, the job description isn't oppressor,
right,
but the decisions they are making.
Well, and don't get it twisted. This DEI, EDI, whatever, diversity, equity, diversity, inclusion, accessibility, justice, whatever the acronym is, this anti-racism work that we do, people who do that for organizations are also getting paychecks. And anytime people do trainings, that's attached to their paycheck. I need you to tap in and make it part of your life. I am not interested in what you do at your job. So, I'm also a lawyer. I'm not practicing, I'm not licensed, but I'm on the OCMBA, the Oregon chapter of the National Bar Association. And one of the things we do is we vet the judges who want to be on the appellate and the judiciary benches. And so one of the questions I remember asking last year, it was my first time being able to be on the asking panel, and the question was, what is your anti-racism work outside of your job? And almost everybody said, well, I do this, that, and the other to advocate for these people. I said, but isn't that in the capacity as a lawyer? Well, yeah. What do you do outside your job? Do you know any black and brown people, that you go have dinner with, that you have relationships with? That do you go to organizations, that you go and do advocacy work that's not on your resume, that you just show up and say, I'm going to help today, or I'm going to put down some money on this and I'm not looking for my name to show up on it? How are you doing that? And a lot of people got upset and flustered, and a few people were like, wow, you know what? I assumed because this is what I've dedicated my life to, I thought this was me being active in community. But you're right. If it's attached to my paycheck, because my thing is, who are you spending time in your free time?
Right.
Does it include people who look like the folks you serve? Who are you having meals with on your free time? Who are you going out with and hanging with? So that's when I know it's in your heart and you are making some real shifts. Those are the folks that I can say, yeah, you about this life. But if it's really limited to your paycheck and what you do on your job, I mean, that's great, but I don't believe that you're shifting. I don't believe you're shifting, hearts and minds as an organization when you're only tracking what people are doing inside the office. I want to know what they're doing with their kids outside the office.
Yeah.
So they could come to Race Talks.
I mean, the other part about that, when we talk about
in July, when you're going to be there presenting,
right.
Are we going to transition to that?
We're going to get to just one more point.
Do folks know that you're shy, Bruce?
I'm gonna stop stalling. But it's funny because as we've talked offline about, sharing the experience of having mothers who are kind of like well known.
Yep.
So in my case, my mother, Willie Poinsette, she co-founded this group, Respond to Racism Lake Oswego, or doing conversations about racism in LO. And one of the things that, has been like an offshoot of that, it's like people will get asked, so what are you doing? What's your commitment to anti-racism in Lake Oswego? And a lot of people, and, I'm glad they support the organization by, coming and attending the meetings.
Yeah.
But I do get a little weird feeling. People say, when they're like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, I go to Respond to Racism meetings. Mm-hmm. The end. Mm-hmm. Like, that's not even a donation. That's not action. And we're like, again, thank you for supporting. Keep coming. Keep engaging in the conversation. But also, I know for a fact people have used that platform to do, because when these things do get like a critical mass, it's a place to be seen. Right. It's a place to gain status. Right. People have come through the Respond to Racism space to propel themselves to city council positions, to the mayor position, to, these roles within the school district, et cetera, to, get a higher profile on their business. Like, they are getting a monetary value by coming there. Yeah. So we can talk about what the work should be, the price point of what the work should be. Yeah. And again, different people come in with different, just economic situations. But some people are definitely going in there, saying, my presence here, my consistent presence here, and they're running campaigns on that. They are getting jobs, they're getting money from that. Yeah. And we can't pretend like that's not happening at the same time when people are trying to devalue the work. So I'll stop it there, and I'll let you ask me questions, I guess. Fine. I guess I'll promote.
So you're a filmmaker.
See, I
am. Let me back up. So,
in this case, I guess I am technically a producer. I can't run away from that. Filmmaker feels strong.
So you created a film that folks can view on YouTube, and it's talking about transplants, and I'm calling it Born and Raised because that's. But say the title for the people so they know.
I call it the Black Oregonian Natives and Transplants Dinner. I go back and forth on the natives part, just because the obvious thing is
verbiage,
verbiage there. But I'll say I pulled the title mostly just from the conversations I see on social media where that's framed,
Okay.
where, again, it's just going to be, that's kind of like how it's framed, is how people discuss it. And sometimes, and again, it's a working thing where people, I don't know, sometimes when it feels like you try and polish something up too much, you get a weird response as well. So I was like, we're just going to go for the red meat here and, let it be what it is.
Yeah.
But that's.
So let's back into the conversation. So the conversation was basically kind of like a race talks-esque in my mind. When I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I want to do this, because you convened a group of people over a meal in an intimate setting. You were basically the facilitator. And you talked about their experience of being Black in Portland as someone who is born and raised Native or someone who's a transplant. And it was a very, I loved everything about it. So we'll get into that in a second. But my question is, and you kind of allude to this when you open it up, but there have been conversations on social media. We have Black Portland as a Facebook page. You mentioned Black Oregonians. I don't think I'm familiar with that page, but is that a?
I think it probably just meant Black Portland.
Okay,
yeah.
So Black Portland, I would say, is probably the largest page that but we also have Black Community of Portland. We have Soul Sister Sundays. We have the Black Oregon Professionals Network. I think I'm butchering that name, but there's a lot of you have BIPOC Black Climbers group. You got hiking groups. You got Black Girls Bike. You got Black Girls Brunch. I mean, but the kind of ground zero feels like Black Portland at this point. And you were saying that there were conversations taking place in these online group settings. So what got you from the place of I'm seeing these conversations take place on social media, I'm going to convene an all Black media crew, film crew, and get a space and actually have a physical conversation? Like, take me through your process of how you got there and what that was like.
So I'll pull it back. I got beginning of 2022, because it's 2023. Yes, right. Sorry.
Last year.
Time is rough. But so I was lucky enough to be one of the 3 recipients of Oregon Humanities Community Storytelling Fellowship.
Nice.
And like I started a series in 2021 or maybe end of 2020. Again, time is relative, called the Black Tastic Adventure, where it was just Zoom interviews basically with Black people about just the different aspects of the Black experience and different faces, not just in like Portland Metro, but also, down in Medford, in Bend, Eugene. Just, I've just done work over the years, interviewing Black people, doing Black stories. And it's just like, I don't feel like, unless it's, I used to work at the Scanner, which is one of the 2 historically Black newspapers, but I just want to give more of a platform to this and give people, especially as someone like I grew up in Lake Oswego, nickname Lake No Negro, and I think it's I do think it's important to give people an opportunity to, especially in these other places, like see Black people and see us just in conversation. So, anyways, fast forward back to the Oregon Humanities Community Storytelling Fellowship. I was like, this is an opportunity to at least try out doing some of this on a bigger scale. So part of that storytelling fellowship was connecting the fellows with mentors and people who could be potential partners. In this case, they connected me with Ifeanyi Bell and Open Signal Labs, just renowned local filmmaker, and with, again, just the access to all the materials at Open Signal. So I was like, oh, this is great. I can get this. I can get this on the good cameras and all the good, like we did we're talking about the dinner here, but we actually did 3 parts for this. One of them was this trip out to Eastern Oregon. And it just sticks with me. Like we had one of those vans, to carry all the equipment, and just all the stuff, like like we're loading in. It's like how many times, like how many of my lives is this van and everything that's in it worth right now? It's just in my mind because it's just like,
Wow.
oh wow, we're like we're really working with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
That's kind of how I feel sitting in here in the studio. I'm like, wow, this is
Right,
crazy.
right. Yeah. So with the dinner, it's just like I want to, not just do I want to have this conversation as far as like people who've been born and raised in Oregon and people who are transplants, but I want to make sure behind the scenes, for lack of better terms, is just as black as possible.
Yeah.
So we were at Louisa's, black owned space on MLK. We had Meals for Heels catering, Nikisa Newton, again, black caterer. I literally actually went there today. So anyways.
Where on MLK is it?
Oh, actually Meals for Heels is at the Red on Salmon. But
is that where they're based out of? Okay,
yeah.
I feel like I always see them at various pop-up events,
Yeah.
and I follow them on Instagram, and they're amazing. Yes,
Yeah.
I have to say that the special shout out that came from Mr. Bobby about how good the food is. Mr. Bobby will let you know if your food is not good.
Right.
So I just want to let folks know that is high praise. That getting a compliment on your food from Mr. Bobby, that is it should be like on a billboard approved by Mr. Bobby. So
yeah. So again, we had Louisa's, we had Meals for Heels catering, we had with Open Signal Labs, you finally got again like an almost all black production crew there. So it's like you got multiple cameras, got sound stage, you got Tiara Darnell, who actually flew in from Mexico to assist us with the project. So shout out to her for that. Even student Nate, who came in, he was actually funny. So he was just walking by Open Signal because it's basically like right across the street from Louisa's.
Okay.
And just ran into Ifani that day, and he was like, hey, we need someone who can like take photos, because usually it would be Intezar who was on the panel, but she was on the panel with us. So that worked out as well. And then I bring it up, Mr. Bobby, just like with the people, because I've had people ask me, hey, why wasn't I invited to this thing? Which I understand.
That's my other question.
It was a fun event.
How did you create your panel? So I will, shameless Race Talks plug. So we had Intisar Aviotto on our February panel for Race Talks. She is amazing in her own right, and also comes from an amazingly talented family. And then Mr. Bobby was one of our celebrated community living icons at our April forum. Salome, I feel like she is definitely an unsung hero in community. Like, she is somebody who is in everything, but you seldom see her out front. And I think it was so great to be able to see her spotlighted in that, because, as she mentioned, like, what do you want me to list? Is this not enough?
Right.
Kind of thing. And it's like, yes, sis, you doing great. But when my mom was in SNF, Dean of Students, Salome was a student. So, I mean, just kind of looking at the historical breakdown of like how we're all connected here. And the other sister who was from Florida, I'm blanking on her name, but we just met recently. So I'm like, oh, I know who, and I went to that event that you were talking about. I didn't know you did that. And, so it was just really fantastic to see how it all came together. But what did inform your process of selecting those people specifically? Because I'm sure there was a lot of people who was mad.
Yeah. So, I mean, one, like, usually I'm the person who's not invited to things, so it's kind of funny being on the other end. But, like, also...
You didn't know you were somebody?
I will say this.
Boosh, you somebody, okay?
If it came off as something that people were like, hey, I wish I could have been there, then that means we did our job right.
Yeah.
But as far as picking people, so it starts with Intezar. Like, Intezar is basically like co-star, co-host of kind of like the 3 specials we did for that fellowship. But also, like I met Intezar when I was working at the scanner. Met her, actually met the family because they were doing sort of like a basically like vegan catering at the time, which is actually also they're responsible for what got me into vegan food.
Veganism? Wow.
Also, this is an event for Karanja Cruz, and shout him out as well. But yeah, so Intezar and I for Urban League of Portland, we did State of Black Oregon. Well, we traveled around doing case studies for State of Black Oregon 2015. So, you know, again, we went around the state, you know, Bend, Eastern Oregon, up to Astoria, you know, Southern Oregon, all these places, just kind of like collecting stories. You know, Intezar, like it was a collaborative interview process. I write up the case stories or case studies. Intezar shoots photos, and that's kind of like, that was also kind of like the impetus for doing the Blacktastic Adventure a few years later. But I knew when this project opportunity came up, I was like, first person I'm reaching out to is Intezar. We gotta get the band back together and do this, even though it's two people.
Listen.
So it started there, and then from there I was just like, okay, and there's so many, you just meet so many amazing personalities that jump off the screen over the years. But also, I want to keep this kind of like contained, like have it. So I want everyone to have enough time to like really be able to like speak. And, you know, like I've watched The Grapevine on YouTube over the years, you know, where they have, it seems like they have like, feels like 12 or 15 people at the table.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, again, the way like they produce that and everything is amazing.
Absolutely.
But I was like, okay, I don't know if we can have it that full.
Yeah.
But I do want to have, you know,
but I get what you're saying. Like you want enough equitable airspace to go around because, you know, because I did know it's interesting for me now to hear that Intezar was one of the co-creators for it, because now it makes sense why maybe she held back a little bit, because I was like, why is she so quiet? You know? And so now that it's like, oh, okay, you know, she's probably wearing dual hats in the moment. At least in my mind, that makes more sense now, because I was like, wow, she's being really quiet in this conversation.
I mean, honestly, like because I interviewed her about the Black Portlanders around the time when she started it. And, you know, just kind of like once we got done with like the interview, that was just an extended conversation we had about, you know, her experience with family coming from Memphis and how they view Portland versus my experience, having, you know, grew up in the suburbs, but going to church out here, having mom working in Portland public schools for decades, you know.
And when you say Black Portlanders, just for folks who don't know, are we talking about Black Portlander, the Facebook page, or Black Portlander, the exhibit that Intezar covered and created?
Right.
Or both.
So yeah, like I guess it started off as like a photo blog, photo essay called The Black Portlanders, and has since kind of like branched off to different exhibits, all kinds of different projects, honestly. You know, it's been featured on like Al Jazeera and CNN, everything. So, you know, but yeah, we're talking about that project, award-winning project, renowned project. So that's kind of where it started. And then again, just like in my mind, thinking about how can I get, you know, who are some of, you know, just personalities again that, you know, they jump off the screen. They're gonna, you know, because again, we're making a production, so you want to like, and I say this as someone who said before, I'm shy, I can be reserved, but there's one of me there already. So we got to get these other people.
But
so
you had Elder, you had, you know, so Mr. And you'll have to remind me of the names because I didn't know everybody, but Mr. Bobby is an elder, all pronoun use. So, you know, also as far as being in a wheelchair. So now we're talking about having disabled representation. There's a I'm just kind of going around the table, Black trans woman who from the Midwest, you know, so we have the regional representation. Then Salome, who's African, first in her family to, you know, be here, but has African roots coming from the continent. but again, the born and raised
Right.
checklist. And then you've got the other sister from Florida. So we've got the South, represented. And then you, of course, who's not Portland, but Portland adjacent, which is, I think, a whole other conversation in terms of folks who would consider themselves from here or enough from here, Pacific Northwest. But it's like, what is Portland? So sometimes from Portland, is depending on the Black folks you're talking about, is like, are you from Albina? Right. like, and then if you're talking to my mom, who really gets in the weeds, is like, yeah, but you were over the hill on such and such block, so you weren't even in the neighborhood. You had to get busted. So it gets deep, right? And then you got the folks. And then you had the brother who was from California, where I'm from. So I'm like, okay, we got West Coast representation, and then Intezar coming also from the South, but Florida, Tennessee, different types of South, because the sister from Florida said she was from South Florida. So again, different representation of Southern culture. And so it just, again, I was like, wow. And then, so then I start looking at who wasn't there. Right. So I'm like, I see no light skinned people, no biracial people. So I felt like it was a very unapologetically, we are Black in Portland. And I feel like a lot of times, the racially ambiguous Blackness of people who come into the Pacific Northwest, oftentimes they don't know they're Black. They don't have a connection to the Black community because maybe they are adopted into a white family, or they have moved here to go to school, and so most of their friends are white, and so they're trying to find the Black community. So I felt the part of the conversation was like, no, we all Black. We all coming from places where it is no question. You look at us and are they Black? Could they be Black? No, we Black. And where we came from, we're Black. Where we are, we're Black. And so now we get to talk about what Blackness means. And so I really love that part of the conversation, because so often we have to get into, and I think Salome talked about that, identifying what Black isn't, so then we can identify what Black is. And so I felt like there was no question in the conversation of who's Black, who's not. Right. You know what I mean? I don't know if a lot of people appreciate that, but I appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean,
was that intentional in your mind?
So as far as trying to kind of make sure a wide range of people were represented, that was definitely very much intentional. It wasn't like, I'm trying to do, the whole, so I make sure, I'm trying to meet a quota of everyone in there, but also, because I also understood it's I'm not going to be able to represent everybody in this conversation.
And you couldn't do that even if you tried.
Yeah. That's the other part.
That is the impossible task. So.
But that said, if you have someone, again, like Mr. Bobby, who, again, elder, his presence is just, it's a big presence.
Oh, yeah.
You have someone and it kind of ranges, because some of those people I've known Mr. Bobby just through being around Black arts community in Portland for some years now. I've known Salome literally since childhood. We went to the same church. I know the whole family, then Ken Jones, you mentioned earlier, I met him probably last year, and I'm a fan of what him and Morgan Jones, no relation, but just a fan of their podcast, The Unrefined Sophisticates, as well as just the other media work they do.
Okay, that's them. Okay, because I was like, why do I know his name?
He's around.
Yeah, they are hilarious. Full disclosure, I don't fully watch podcasts. I'm terrible about it, so I'm getting better, Bruce. I'm following
There's
you.
A lot out there.
There's a lot.
I don't blame anyone.
I do follow Instagram, and I catch the vignettes, and so I love their sense of humor. And yes, just amazing. Thank you for making that connection for me, because I was like, okay, I know there's a draw here. So
yeah. So then with like Dahlia Bell, you know, I saw her at the Black and Tours storytelling event, which is put on by Minority Retort and Jason Lamb, and
No, where was Dahlia sitting at the table?
Dahlia's a Black trans woman.
In between Mr. Bobby and Salome, and then there was another sister.
Oh yeah, and then
opposite.
Chanel.
Chanel is her name? Yeah.
Crystal Chanel.
Crystal Chanel.
Yeah, it was from Florida. I met her at it's funny, we're doing a media, kind of like a Black media event at the Albino Arts Center a couple years ago, and I think she was one of the first people who kind of like raised her hand during the Q&A, and because someone had mentioned a conversation sort of alluding to the transplants discussion, and then she just kind of raised that up in the Q&A, and that was kind of like one of the more lively discussions after that. It's actually, and I said on the dinner too, really it was one of the impetus for doing this specifically,
right?
Because she's talking about her experience coming from Florida,
with
working in media,
and
well that too, but just like transition to Oregon, and just some of these conversations you get, because while a big part of it was following up on just like the online discourse, it's not new conversation. It's not something it's something that does happen in just like passing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what the online part of it that stuck out is just because when people are in these comment threads, I think they feel a little more space to really, say what's on their mind and like speak.
Be assholes. Yeah.
That too. That's the less generous interpretation.
I mean, I'm just gonna say what I'm thinking here, Bruce, because it's true. People are rude, until you get into direct,
right,
face-to-face contact, and then it's like, I recognize your name. You was the one popping off in them comments. Do you want to talk about that now? It's like, oh no, yeah.
So, I just wanted to, again, just like assemble kind of like these personalities with people, some I've known for years, some I've only kind of like met recently, but just like, I would love to have, just your presence and your personality on screen for this particular discussion. And again, it came together great, shout out to the whole team behind it. And I think, again, we're not able to, it's only like a 50-something minute conversation. But
it's packed.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And I wanted to go back to Dahlia. I don't want to jump over her. I was really surprised, like pleasantly surprised, to hear her say that as a Black trans woman, she feels safe in Portland. Because I think just recognizing that Black trans women are the most murdered Black folks in the world, and getting our community to, get over their homophobia, transphobia. That just, I was like, that I would say if there was one thing that really shocked me in the scope of the conversation, that was the one. I was like, really? Okay, Portland. All right. Because I would say for all the places that I've lived, New York, I taught in the Bronx, I grew up in Oakland, I remember Portland in the 80s, I feel relatively unsafe in Portland right now. And I think it's mostly the white supremacy aspect of feeling like, as Black folks here, we just melanated, we walking down the street just feel very vulnerable, and just like my head is always on a swivel. But then there's also a level of just us not acknowledging each other. I can't tell you how often I walk past Black folks and I'm like, hi, how you doing? And it's like, and I'm like, do I not look Black enough today? Like, what did you not see? I'm like, hello, I'm here. And so, but ironically, we have a lot of Black folks in the social media pages saying we don't speak to each other. And so I don't know if that's weather. I don't know if people are expecting to be ignored, so they just keep their heads down. I don't know what it is, but I'm so happy that Dahlia felt safe. I think that I was just really happy to hear that. That was amazing.
I mean, I think that's the other thing I was hoping to kind of like bring out in this conversation. It's just like there are little nuances, little like one just from like people's experiences and perspectives, but just like I think we all have in our mind how this is supposed to go or how the conversation's supposed to go. You know, we've read the comment threads and everything, but when we really get to like talk about our experiences and we really get to talk about, again, just those little nuances to it, I think it's just very informative. And in this discussion, again, like I said, we're not able to cover the whole ground. We're not able to solve the tensions in there, but my hope is it gives people, again, opportunity to just like see themselves or see their experience. Even when you talk about just walking around, because like I vacillate, honestly. Like I'm, again, just my own social nature. Yeah. Like I move with very visible social anxiety. So sometimes I'll be around, it's like nods there. Sometimes it's just like,
right.
I don't know. And sometimes I'll not get it back and be like,
Thank you for reminding me. Like social anxiety is a thing. So sometimes if people aren't looking up and making eye contact, it's like, you know, interestingly enough, to segue back to our conversation about anti-racism and white allyship, my mom was interviewed by a woman who has a blog called Hagsters, and looking at her, I could tell, you know, she's a woman of color, you know, kind of white passing woman of color. And so we started talking about, you know, what she could do to be more actively engaged. And I said, well, you know, at Race Talks, we always say, you know, do you know your neighbors? You know, 3 in front of you, people next door, both sides, and not just like by name. Have you been inside each other's houses? You know, do you have each other's numbers? Know each other by name? And she was like, yeah, I know a couple. And I said, well, do you speak to people on the street and say hello and make eye contact? And she said, well, no, I feel like that's so invasive. And I'm like, well, as women, you know, if you go through any kind of sexual assault prevention courses, making eye contact and speaking to people is kind of the first step to avoiding an attack, because your attacker is less likely to come after you if they know that you're aware of them and, you know, can see them and anticipate and then pick them out, right? But my question to her was, how are you going to call out racism if you can't speak to people on the street? You know, like, it's levels to this, you know? And so I need you to work up on just being able to say hi to people and make eye contact, so I can eventually get you to the space of calling out the racists in those spaces. And it was like a light bulb moment, you know? And so I think just being able to be in space with each other, communicating, doing all those things, we need more of that. We need more spaces. And I do think as confrontational as the Black Portland space has gotten, Solomon pointed out the fact that it's a small town here. And whenever I meet new people, especially Black folks in Portland, I'm like, listen, it's like being at HBCU campus. We all know each other. We related to each other. We've slept with each other. So whoever you're going to talk about is going to talk to that person. So whoever you got issues with, be very careful about speaking up too loudly about it, because we all coexist, and you never know when you're going to have to circle back to these people and have to, you know, be in space and work together or whatever. And so I heard her say something to that effect, which is, we don't really have the option to not get along. We can't just be out here beefing. It's not enough of us. And so I feel like the pandemic forced us into a space of connecting online because we needed it. We were isolated, but also it forced us to have conversations that we weren't having with each other. And the fact that you've now created this film, you know, and it's inspiring people to have more conversations, I think is just absolutely wonderful. So I'm thankful for you for doing that.
Well, I mean, thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, one of the, like two goals with this beyond just putting it out there is, one, to hopefully inspire not just having the discussion, not just this particular discussion, but
Yeah.
you know, being able to like build with each other and explore these things, and you know, hopefully be able to like do it in a space that, again, it's not just the most toxic internet thread, preferably, but
Right.
maybe, you know, if that's where it happens, it happens. But then also because I know people, just gonna again, let's put the spotlight on the whites here. We're gonna look and say, okay, so what does this have to do with racism and white supremacy,
Yeah.
and what does this have to do with us?
What does it?
And
What
it's like,
does it have to do with that?
the fact that like as black peoples, black Oregonians, white supremacy is literally dividing us. It, I mean, has and is literally dividing us. And like it, when we talk about what is affecting black quality of life in Oregon, that's part of it. So if I look at specifically in this case, like funding from the Community Storytelling Fellowship that helped put it together, when people ask like, how can I be an ally? And I kind of recoil with the word, not because of the definition itself, but just because, you know,
Yeah.
terms become just like talking points and like buzzwords that
Yeah.
stop having any meaning. But that aside, when people are like, you know, how can I be an ally? Like, support this. Like, don't just support, you know, anti-racism or DEI work where, you know, there's a deliverable for you,
Right.
which I don't think a lot of people think about. Like, it's cool if it's like, oh, I get to participate in a discussion, I get to be there. But what about the stuff that people need that doesn't involve you, that's still very important? Support that too. And my hope is that there'll be people watching this and say, oh, that's a way I can contribute and, you know, support more spaces like this, whether it's, you know, obviously for black Oregonians, I want to
Right.
get more investment in that because we're in a situation of mass and continuing and aggressive divestment.
Yeah.
So I would like to spur that, but just when it comes to a lot of these issues, like I just want people to support the wraparound stuff, not just like the stuff that makes, as someone who worked in the news, I noticed that people support stuff that makes for like good pictures or good videos or entertaining things. But some of that stuff, like, yes, we made a video out of this, but a lot of this work, a lot of what's needed is like a lot of like wraparound stuff that isn't as glamorous or necessarily made for a TV show, but it's important.
Can you expand on that? What is, when you say wraparound, what does that look like?
So yeah, like community building, for example, with just even putting this together. Again, like we made it into a video to, you know, distribute and show to people, but this could have easily also just been a discussion behind the scenes. And honestly, I think when we talk about community building work, facilitating spaces, like especially with like stuff I do in schools, you know, I see this need for like just spaces, not just for black students to gather, but to feel safe.
Yeah.
Some schools, you know, they have more of a population and like, you know, that BSU space is respected, but that's not always the case, especially when you get out in these suburbs where even just being able to gather and be with each other is a problem, or it's like, it's a struggle. So facilitating more spaces for that, facilitating this stuff again, like, you know, being able to pay for food so people can, you know, it's not just showing up, it's also being nourished literally in a lot of
Right.
cases.
Yeah.
So when I say like wraparound, I just mean, again, all that stuff that's not necessarily comes with like this clear deliverable or this clear product, but is important just for making it work and making sure people are taken care of.
Right.
So we just talk about, you know, food and space, but it's, I don't know, it's
And
kind
then
of
if
like
you
all
want
that
to
stuff.
dig in deeper in terms of compensating people for their time for showing
Oh,
up, or
yeah.
just
And-
how their businesses or their organizations need support. I mean,
Also, I just want to,
absolutely.
because you mentioned compensation, sorry to cut you off there, but
Yeah.
also making sure that with this, we're able to pay people for
Yeah.
their time being there, not just
Absolutely.
like, you know, people working behind the scenes, but people on camera as talent, because that's important. Again,
Absolutely.
So
I'm getting exposure to that. You know, we had the first 10 years of Race Talks was primarily funded through volunteer efforts. White folks stepping in saying, hey, I see a need. So we had somebody, Joe Anybody, who actually works here at the museum, I believe, but in his free time, would come to Race Talks, videotape our segments, upload it on YouTube, did editing for 10 years, and for a $50 food card that we, got from McMenamins. And then Teresa Horney created a website, to post it on. Mom had no idea any of this was happening. So by the time I showed up, I'm like, did you know you have a YouTube page and a website? And, we could be utilizing these things. And so, as we step back into the in-person space, I've started utilizing OpenSignal as well. And, finding out the very real costs of what equipment costs and what it means to have someone come in to do it. And it's like, oh my God, this is really expensive, and editing costs and the time it takes to sit down with the editor and figure out what you want your product to look like and all the things. And so I think, again, that's all time, that's money, that's cost. And then honorariums for people who are coming to speak. If we're trying to remove barriers by bringing people in for dinner time, having food cards available so we can provide food for people. So all of that has a cost to it. So a lot of times people think, oh, it's free. No, it's not free. Free is not transfer. It's free to you because it's important to us to make sure that folks are coming in and able to be in the space and not have barriers. But there is very much a cost. And so I think what I hear you saying is looking at it in a way that's very responsible to say, just because this is a passion project, I can't expect people to show up and work for free. They had to go to school and get educated. They had to buy their equipment. They have real skills that are being brought into this effort. I have to show up and be able to do it. And so the fellowship is great, but one thing I did notice in the viewing, you got different camera placements, but there's one camera moving around. Mm-hmm. And so my question to you is, have you been able to finish the final editing with the other, or is that something that's still in play for you, or are you fine with this as a final cut? Kind of what's your process there?
Yeah, so I'm just be real about it. It's definitely something where, so there's two kind of outstanding things about that project right now. One is that video, as far as actually being able to utilize the other camera angles, mm-hmm. and not just Ifeanyi on the roaming camera through there. Yeah. Although I think that was one of the good things about working with Ifeanyi and OpenSignal Labs is that, he gave me enough to work with that effectively, I'm not going to say he idiot-proofed it for me, but in a lot of ways, honestly, I feel like he made it so it's even if it's just left up to my devices, I can use this so I can put out this discussion.
Yeah, if you don't do nothing else with this, you've got something. Yeah.
But yeah, I have two between that, and then I mentioned the Eastern Oregon trip because that's the video that still hasn't come out yet. And if I'm being real about what I want to do with that one, I want to actually work with an editor to get it, to make it into something that can be shown at the airport. And I know a lot of the parts of the process to get there. Mm-hmm. Also, I got a quote on, what that project would cost.
Can you share with us? Because I think it's important that people understand real numbers when we talk about producing content like this about ourselves.
Yeah. So the number I got, and this is not to get it directly into the airport. This is just to get it edited.
Yes.
Professionally edited down to that kind of, short feature, high quality thing. It's $5,000. Yeah. So, and again, that's
hours of footage into 5 to 15 minutes if it's for the airport, because you're not looking at an hour long.
Probably not even 15, maybe 10 at top level, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But again, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Even with like, I do a little bit of patchwork editing to get some stuff up. And I know how much time that takes me. Never mind, again, trying to like really not just put the stuff together, but get these transitions right, get the coloring right, get all this stuff to, again, make it a full production. So, part of what I'm doing, if I'm being completely honest with the people, is like, I want to get the information out there. For me, just journalist background, everything. If I can get the info out there, that's my thing. But also, that's why I think it's important. And I try to like collaborate with people who,
so what I'm hearing is we have an editor's quote. We need a benefactor to come up with 5,000 plus so you can get your project edited. Now that's just on the Blacktastic rural Oregon trip, right? But what is there more editing that needs to happen for the dinner conversation movie?
Well, I mean, the editing for that is just kind of like what you mentioned before, where it's just incorporating the different camera angles. And
so we got an ask out here, people, for 5,000 to 10,000. We need a new editor. Well, not new editor. It sounds like we got an editor. We need money. We need a check.
But yeah. So
and if somebody wants to send you a check, Bruce, where do they send it?
Well, you can find me on Venmo and Cash App at Bruce Poinsette. Thank you for the plug. We'll do this at the event as well. I just want to say with the, I guess with my priority with those two is the Eastern Oregon one, just because, and the reason I emphasize the airport, like not just like with the dinner, I'd like to have, a more fully polished video.
Yeah.
But also my goal from the jump with that was always I wanted people to engage with the full conversation if I could do it that way. So it worked out in a way where it's like I can engage people with the full conversation. In this case, you've provided me with a captive audience, so I appreciate that. But with the Eastern Oregon one, it's just like when I think about where projects like this are screened, not just to, it's one thing to like reach out to the audience locally and like basically like who I made this for, because it is a conversation for us.
Yeah.
But I've also learned just being out here, and it's not like a uniquely Portland, Oregon thing where people take the local thing more seriously when other people start paying attention.
Yeah.
So I want also, it's just, there's so many beautiful shots from that. But it is a Portland
thing. I mean, the fact we have billboards that said there are Black people in Portland, I mean, I think having representation at the airport that lets people know we here, and we're not just in Portland, we're all over.
Yeah, and like, I mean, Wallowa County was, we're recording this on May 18th. Wallowa County just voted the same place where the Maxville Heritage Interpretive Center is located. Like, they just voted for further consideration to become part of Greater Idaho. Like, that's the place we're talking about. And for obvious reasons that, it's a big headline, it's a big story about the place. They did a Daily Show segment last year kind of about that movement. But it's important, again, that people know that in this same place, you have, again, an institution of not just Black history, but primarily, well, this isn't even primarily, but like history of Black loggers and the logging community, the diverse logging community as a whole in Oregon, founded, run by a Black woman who grew up out there, who went through so many things, honestly, out there. And Gwen Trice.
Shout out to Gwen.
Yeah, and it's important that people also know that, because, oftentimes when we see, oh, they just voted to secede to Greater Idaho, well, yeah, those white people should go there. But it's like, there's some, like, weird, maybe not in large numbers, but we're out there too. And in this particular case, it's not just people just happen to live and work there. It's a person who's like the keeper of the history.
Now, we're talking about specifically Eastern Oregon, but what's a city? You named the county, but what's a city that people would kind of associate with this?
So, yeah, the Maxville Center is located in Joseph, Oregon. And so that's where we interviewed Gwen for that series. And then we also were in Pendleton, interviewed man Leon Ransom about, well, one, his experience, but then also kind of like black cowboy culture, because, you know, it's Pendleton Roundup and all that atmosphere there as well. And it's like, again, it's just so much history and stuff. I've been going on so long. I don't want to.
No, actually, as you're talking about Gwen, you know, most of us have seen each other over Zoom, you know, for the past few years, and we were called in. So one of the things that we do as Race Talks is we also do consulting facilitation, and so for the Meyer Memorial Trust, Oregon Justice Black Lives Initiative fund that they were creating, we help facilitate conversations of Black Oregonians around how could this fund be used. And I remember Gwen was there, and, you know, it's probably 40 or 50 of us in this conversation, and she just started crying. She got so emotional. She was talking about what she does with the Black Pioneers and just the different work that she does. And she was just like, I am so emotionally overjoyed and overwhelmed right now to see so many Black faces. And it just, I think that that's something that often in the scope of my work, I come in contact with Black folks all day, every day. So when people say, I never see Black people, I'm like, where are you? You know? And so I get where she is. There's very few of us, but I also look at Portland and I'm like, there really is no reason why you shouldn't be seeing Black people every day, because we're here. Now, I don't know if you're looking for us, you know, there has to be some intentionality to go find folks and meet folks and put yourself out there. And I get that in cities like Atlanta or Chicago, where Black folks are everywhere, you don't have to, you know, be as assertive, but I feel like it's definitely worth the effort. To figure out where are the Black folks so you can really prioritize being in space with each other here. I almost feel like I see so many Black folks here in Portland that I'm like, where's everybody else? You know, it's like white folks and Black folks. I'm like, where are my Asian, Latino, where are my other folks here that, you know, growing up in California, our cultures are so rich. But I will say, Bruce, that this idea of being born and raised here versus being a transplant is a universal conversation that transcends just the Black community. I feel like I hear Black folks, white folks, Asian, Latino, you name it, indigenous. I don't care who you are. If they're born and raised here, there's an emphasis on I'm born and raised here. I was on such and such street. I remember, and not just kind of in our age group, but like I hear 70. You know, folks in our mother's generation who are like, I'm born and raised here, you know, and white folks and Asian folks. And so I feel like this conversation, while the cultural and racial significance really is to Black folks in Portland or in Oregon, the reality is it's a universal conversation. So I'm really excited that you're coming to Race Talks. Second Tuesday in July, we're going to screen the movie. And then we're going to have breakout discussion. So it's over dinner, so folks can come and have dinner. All ages are welcome. And folks will have a chance to kind of dive into the conversations with each other about what it means to be a transplant versus being born and raised here. So I'm super excited that you get to. Is this the official premiere?
Yeah. This is the live premiere. Obviously, you mentioned before, it's available on YouTube. You can go watch it, youtube.com/Bruce Poinsette now. But in terms of like actually premiere in a space, and I think so great about doing it with like the Race Talks format is just being able to not just watch it, but actually have a discussion with people. Because like I said, again, my ideal going in with it was I wanted to, if I could have people engage with a full conversation and actually discuss it, actually get into it. You know, obviously, I think in this sort of like media environment, you know, I understand you talk about just, you know, trying to like keep up with podcasts earlier, where it's hard. Like there's so much content out there, and most cases. And I've been glad that like I've gotten a good response with just like I've clipped a few, maybe probably like 4 segments I want to say out of the dinner for social media.
Nice.
You know, and I think I've gotten a good response on those because I know that that's where most people are going to see this. You know, that's where most people are going to engage, and I love those 4 minutes of the conversation, but to really again just like get the full thing, to really experience it and to be there in a conversation with other people at the table afterwards, I think is going to be really powerful. And it's like, I'm really excited about that. So yeah. Thank you again for having me for Race Talks.
Absolutely. And I hope you make sure to let everybody who is affiliated with the project, know that they should come. You know, I think it's exciting to see your face up on the screen, but also, you know, not to put them on the spot. You know, it's going to be your show, so I'm going to be equally surprised about kind of what you have set up for us when we arrive on that day. But definitely, you know, it would, all are welcome. You know, who participated in the project, who are subjects, who, because it'd be very interesting to see how their thoughts have evolved. You know, what kind of feedback they've gotten from doing it. Have they hosted their own dinner parties? You know, which I would definitely encourage folks that, you know, if you're trying to meet people in community and build space, like host a dinner party. We're starting to do more things in public, or go to a restaurant and invite people and, you know, see who shows up and see what kind of conversations you have.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's, like I said, it's, if it encourages people to kind of just, you know, build community with each other and, you know, seek out some more of these just like relationships and like intentional relationship building, then again, we will have accomplished our job. And so, yeah, you know,
Absolutely.
Just look straight at the camera. July 11th, Race Talks, McMenamins, Kennedy.
Oh, I do have a camera right there.
Not Kennedy Center.
It's McMenamins Kennedy School.
Kennedy School.
We're going to do it in the gym. We thought about doing it in the theater, but this way we have the ability to do our more intimate breakout roundtable conversations following the movie.
And it's better to eat.
And it's better to eat, right? Because one of the things, you know, Mom always says is that we have race talks over a meal, because anytime you're talking about issues of race, you know, the eating food helps alleviate any indigestion that, you know, comes from, you know, getting into it with folks. So, So Bruce Poinsette, thank you for being my guest today on your show.
Yes, thank you for taking the reins as the interviewer this time. And again, July 11th, McMenamins Kennedy School.
Yes.
Miss Maxie's and Miss Poinsette's children coming together, making conversation happen.
Absolutely.